I mentioned in my last video of a two-star general being a brigade commander, but he could have actually have been a division commander. I remember the base where I was stationed having 2.5 divisions, so I believe that he was in command of half of the 2.5 divisions. But he also had a dojo where I first met him and became his student. But my memories are going back 40 plus years from the last time I stepped foot on a base. From my research, an Army two-star general is equivalent to a Navy's admiral. A two-star general typically commands a fort, and a Navy admiral typically commands a Navy fleet. But then in my early 20s, I didn't know Yahuah like I know him today. I was a small kid growing up, so I remember thinking that I would always be small, even as an adult. But when I reached a certain age, I sprang up, so I was a late bloomer. Remember this, the enemy has insulted Yahuah, and the foolish people has despised your name. Most of the Christians see life as being fine. There's not a lot of words, just put all your burdens on the JC. They have been plugged into a system that appears to be working fine. So if someone comes with a doctrine that they don't understand, the shields go up, and they block out any incoming information. Like Cypher from the Matrix fell into the truth, but he didn't want to know the truth, so he sold himself out and told them to plug him back into the lie. He just didn't want to remember anything. So people get offensive, especially Christians, when they hear that people are declaring that the world is not the world that you think it is. But the world is in a fourth beast system. And Shalimar built his own house for 13 years, and he completed his entire house. And he built the house of Lebanon. It was 100 cubits long and 50 cubits wide and 30 cubits high, with 4 rows of cedar columns and cedar beams on the columns. And it was paneled with cedars above the beams that were 45 columns, 15 to a row. And they were windowless with narrow frames in 3 rows, and windowless was opposite window 3 times. And all the doorways and doorposts had square frames, and windowless was opposite window 3 times. He made the porch of the columns 50 cubits long and 30 cubits wide, and the porch was in front of them, and the columns and the roof was in front of them. And he made a hall for the throne, the law of lawfulness, where he ruled. It was paneled with cedar from floor to floor. And the house where he was to dwell in the other courtyard within the hall was like a workmanship. And Shalimar made a house like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, whom he had taken. All these were precious stones hewed to size, sawed with a saw inside and out, from the foundations to the coping, and also of the outside to the great courtyard. And the foundations was of precious stone hewed to size, and cedar wood. So the courtyard all around had 3 rows of hewed stones and rows of cedar beams, as was the inner courtyard of the house of Yahuah and the porch of the house. And King Shalimar sent and brought Kiram from Sur. And he was the son of a widow from the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Sur, a bronze worker, and he was filled with the wisdom and understanding and skills in working with all kinds of bronze work. So he came to King Shalimar and did all his work. And he cast 2 columns of bronze, each one 18 cubits high, and a line of 12 cubits measures the circumferences of each. And he made 2 capitals of cast bronze to put on the top of the columns. The height of the one capital was 5 cubits, and the height of the other capital was 5 cubits. A lattice network with garlands of chainwork for the capital. And he made the columns and 2 rows of pomegranates above the networks all around to cover the capitals that were on top, and so he did for the other capital. And the capitals that were on the top of the columns in the hall were in the shape of lilies, 4 cubits. And there were capitals above also in the 2 columns by the bowls which were next to the network. The pomegranates were 200 in rows on each of the capitals all around. When he set up the columns by the porch of the Hekel, and he set up the columns on the right and called its name Yakin, and he set up the columns on the left and called its name Boaz. And on the top of the columns was lily work, thus the work of the columns was completed. And he made a sea of cast metal 10 cubits from one rim to the other, round all about, 5 cubits high, and a line of 30 cubits measured around it. And below its rims were ornaments all around, 10 to a cubit, all the way around to the sea. The ornaments were cast in 2 rows when it was cast. It stood on 12 oxen, 3 facing north, 3 facing south, and 3 facing east, and the sea was set upon them, and all their back parts were inward. And it was a handbreadth thick, and its rims were shaped like the rims of a cup, like a lily blossom. It held 2,000 baths. And this is how the stands were made. They had side panels, and the side panels were between frames. And on the side panels that were between the frames were lions, oxen, and cherubims, and a pedestal above on the frame, below the lions, and the oxen were garlands of beatenwork. And each stand had 4 bronze wheels and axles of bronze, and its 4 feet had supports. Under the basins were cast supports beside each garland. And its openings inside the crown at the top was 1 cubit, and the openings was round, like the work of the pedestal, 1.5 cubit, and also on the openings were engravings, while on the side panels were square, not round. And the 4 wheels were under the side panels, and the axles of the wheels were joined to the stand, and the height of the wheels was 1.5 cubits. And the wheels were made like chariot wheels, their axles, pins, and their rims, and their spokes, and their hub were all cast. And there were 4 supports at the 4 corners of each stand. Its supports were of the stand itself. And on the top of the stand 1/2 cubit in height, round all around, and on the top of the stand its flanges and its side panels were the same. And on the plates of its flanges and on the side panels he engraved cherubims, lions, and palm trees according to the open space on each, with garlands all around. He made the 10 stands like this. All of them were of 1 mound, 1 measure, and 1 shape. And he made 10 basins of bronze. Each basin contained 40 baths, and each basin was 4 cubits, 1 basin on each of the 10 stands. And he put 5 stands on the right side of the house, and 5 stands on the left side of the house, and he put the sea on the right side of the house to the east, facing the south. And Kiram made the pots and the shovels and the bowls, and Kiram completed doing all the works that he was to do for King Solomon in the house of Yahuah. The 2 columns and the 2 bowl-shaped capitals that were on the top of the columns, and the 2 networks covering the 2 bowl-shaped capitals which were on the top of the columns. And the 400 pomegranates for the 2 networks, and the 2 rows of pomegranates for each network to cover the 2 bowl-shaped capitals that were on the top of the columns. And the 10 stands and the 10 basins on the stands, and the 1 sea and the 12 oxen under the sea, and the pots and the shovels and the bowls and all these utensils which Hiram made for King Solomon for the house of Yahuah were of polished bronze. The king had them cast in clay in the districts of Yarden between Succoth and Sarathan. And Solomon left all the utensils unweighed because there were many, nor was the weight of the bronze searched out. So Solomon made all the utensils of the house of Yahuah, the altar of gold, and the table of gold on which was the showbread, and the lampstand of refined gold, 5 on the right side, and 5 on the left in front of the speaking place, with the flowers and the lamps, and the snuffers of gold, and the basins and the snuffers and the bowls and the ladies, and the fire holders of refined gold, and the hinges of gold, both for the doors of the inner house, the most Kadesh place, and for the doors of the house of the Hekel. Thus all the works which King Solomon had done for the house of Yahuah was completed, and Solomon brought in the Kadesh items of his father David, the silver and the gold and the utensils, and he put them in the treasuries of the house of Yahuah. Before a couple of chapters ago, I never gave any thought about the country of Lebanon, the place of Kiram. But now I'm learning that Israel and Lebanon are on the verge of an all-out war between the 2 countries. But back in the reign of Solomon, Yesharon and Lebanon had a covenant with each other. A lot of the resources that helped build King Solomon's kingdom and his palace were coming from Lebanon. Both countries are bordered to each other on the Mediterranean Sea. We learned from the last 2 chapters that Lebanon is a country known for the cedar tree. The wood from the cedar tree was heavily used on the temple that Solomon built as the house of Yahuah. But since the time of Solomon up to the present time, Lebanon has gone through several conflicts and civil wars. Beirut is the capital of Lebanon. Lebanon's origin dates all the way back to about 3000 BC. Tehillim 92. It is good to give thanks to Yahuah and to sing praises to your name, highest one, to declare your kindness in the morning and your integrity each Layla. On 10 strings and on the harp to the sounding chorus of the lyre. For you have made me rejoice with you, O Yahuah. I shout for joy at the works of your hand. O Yahuah, how great are your works. Your thoughts are very deep. A senseless man does not know, a fool does not understand this. When the lawless spring up like grass and all the workers of wickedness blossom, it is for them to be destroyed forever. But you, Yahuah, are on high forever. For look, your enemies, O Yahuah, for look, your enemies do perish. All the workers of wickedness are scattered. But you lift up my horns like a wild ox. I have been anointed with fresh oil. And my eye look upon my enemies, my ear hear the evildoers who rise up against me. The obedient ones flourish like the palm tree, he grows up like a cedar in Lebanon. Those who are planted in the house of Yahuah flourish in the courts of our Elohim. They still bear fruit in old age, they are fresh and green. To declare that Yahuah is straight, my rock, and in him is no lawlessness. I believe one of the most important things in life is pursuing transparency and integrity. Sometimes, as there are secrets behind a thick wall, you must have the ability to see what's on the other side of the wall. So if the walls is layered with lies, the only way to penetrate the lies is from truth. Those truths must be strong enough to overcome the lies. So if something starts out as a lie, you can't make the lie to truth by just accepting it as truth. A lie is a lie and always will be a lie, and lies is opposite of the truth. Darkness cannot penetrate darkness. The light must be strong enough to see through the darkness. So we must have faith in Yahuah to show us the light. Truth must be capable of shining through darkness. If a person tells you their name and the next time you see them and you call them by another name, they will correct you right at point and tell you their correct name. I remember years ago I was calling this guy by his wrong name and he didn't tell me that I was calling him by his wrong name. So after calling him several times by his wrong name, I realized other people were calling him by a different name. Then when I asked someone what was his name, they told me he had a different name. So I called him by the name because I didn't have my facts right and assume I had the right facts. Yahuah 5:39 through 47. You search the scriptures because you think you possess everlasting life in them, and these are the ones that bear witness of me. But you do not desire to come to me in order to possess life. Do not receive esteem from men. But I know you that you do not receive me. If another comes in his own name, him you would receive. How are you able to believe when you are receiving esteem from one another, and the esteem that is from the only Elohim you do not seek? Do not think that I shall accuse you to the Father. There is one who accuses you, Musha, whom you have set your expectations. If you had believed in Musha, you would have believed in me, since he wrote about me. But if you do not believe his writings, how shall you believe my words? There are many groups that hold the Trinity doctrine. They believe that the Trinity consists of three persons, the Father, the Son, and the Ruach HaKodesh. I believe that when Yahushua was saying that unless he returned to the Father, he could not send back the Ruach HaKodesh. But I believe that he is saying that he must go back to his full esteem in order to send back his esteem in the form of the Spirit in full power. So he told the people that Moshe wrote about him in the scriptures, so Moshe had to have already known him. So when I found out this person's real name, I didn't continue calling him by the name that I thought was his. No, I had to accept the embarrassment of calling him by his wrong name and start calling him by his true name. I didn't try to play it off and say, oh, you look like a John, it's why I called you John. I wanted to call him by his real name, just like I would want him to call me by my real name. It seems to me that people who would want to have a relationship with the Creator would want to get his name right. Yahuah didn't say by only one deity we must be saved. He said by only one name we must be saved. Yahuah 7 says, do not judge lest you be judged. For what judgment you judge, you shall be judged, and with the same measures you use, it shall be measured to you. And why do you look at the specks in your brother's eye, but do not notice the log in your own eye? Or how is it that you say to your brother, let me remove the speck out of your eye, and see a log is in your own eye? Hypocrites, first move the log from your own eye, and then you shall see clearly to remove the specks out of your brother's eye. Do not give what is kadesh to the dogs, or throw the pearls before the pigs, lest they trample them under their feet, and turn and tear you in pieces. Ask, and it shall be given to you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened to you. For everyone who asks receives, and he who seeks finds, and to him who knocks it shall be opened. Or is there a man among you whom, if his son asks for bread, shall give him a stone? Or if he asks for fish, shall give him a snake? If you then, being wicked, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more shall the Father who is in the Shamayim give what is good for those who ask him? Therefore, whatever you wish men to do to you, do also to them, for this is the Torah and the prophets. Enter in through the narrow gate, because the gate is wide and the way is broad that leads to destruction, and there is many who enter in through it. Because the gate is narrow and the way is hard pressed, which leads to life, and there are few who find it. But beware the malicious prophets who come to you in sheep clothing, but inwardly they are savage wolves. By their fruit you shall know them. Are grapes gathered from thorn bushes, or figs from thistles? So every good tree yields good fruit, but a rotten tree yields wicked fruit. A good tree is unable to yield wicked fruit, and a rotten tree to yield good fruit. Every tree that does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. So then by their fruit you shall know them. Not everyone who says to me, Adonai, Adonai, shall enter into the reign of the Shamayim, but he who is doing the desire of my Father in the Shamayim. Many shall say to me in that yom, Adonai, Adonai, have we not prophesied in your name, and cast out demons in your name, and done many mighty works in your name? And then I shall declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye who work lawlessness. Therefore everyone who hears these words of mine and does them shall be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rains came down, and the flood came, and the wind blew and beat on that house, and it did not fall, for it was founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them shall be like a foolish man who builds his house on the sand. And the rains came down, and the floods came, and the wind blew, and they beat on that house, and it fell, and great was its fall. And it came to be when Yahushua had ended these words that the people were stunned at his teachings. For he was teaching them as one possessing authority, and not as the scribes. So I believe the rock that we build our house on is the word of Yahuah. I just turned 64 this week, and all but 2 of those years I only knew and acknowledged one Savior. But a lot of people may bury their heads in the sand when they encounter those truths. But common sense alone tells me that his name wasn't Jesus when he died on the stake. I believe there's power in that name, but only to keep you trusting in the lie. The true Savior's name is Yahuah. There is only one name in the Shamayim or beneath the Shamayim by which we can become saved. That name is Yahuah. There are some groups out there that believe that you got to be born into the faith of salvation. They believe you got to belong to a particular race or ethnic group in order to receive Yahuwah's gift of salvation. I'm not one of those groups. But I believe Yahuwah's mission was for us to spread the Besorah to every nation. But I believe there were other groups whose mission was to stop the Besorah from going out. So they needed a device to lead people astray, like changing the Father's name. That's the confirmation we should all be seeking. We must accept the truth, restoring the Father's true name. Fighting for some land or declaring ownership of some land is not defamation, in my opinion. Living in the past and not moving forward towards finding the true Besorah is not the defamation we should be seeking. We should be fighting for the kingdom and not fighting for a piece of land. We shouldn't want a land that Shatain declare to have ownership. The kingdom of Yahuwah, the kingdom of the Shamayim, is the land we should be focused on. We got to move forward. I'm not saying forget the past. I'm saying don't let the past drag you down and making yourself a victim. Thanks for watching and thanks for sharing. If Yahuah is willing, I'll see you on the next video. So until then, stay blessed and be blessed and continue to be blessed. Hallelujah. Praise Yahuah.